Hello and welcome back to Bedtime Sleep History. It's late and the world has grown quiet. Wherever you are listening from, whether it's just past midnight in Texas, early morning in Nigeria, or the still hours before dawn in Indiana, I'm so glad you're here. Tonight we are going to journey gently through time, back to a world of stone, castle and wooden hut. A time before running water, before electricity. A time when hygiene means something very different and perhaps very strange. Close your eye, breathe deeply. Let the modern world drift away. Tonight's story is about what cleanliness meant in the Middle Ages. From bathhouses and herbal perfumes to chamber pots and sacred ritual, let's explore how people stay clean or try to. In a time where water could be dangerous and soap was made of ash and animal fat, let's begin. A world without showers, the basic of medieval cleanliness. In the medieval world, there were no showers, no toothbrushes in plastic wrappers, no shampoos or scented body wash lying neatly on shelves, and yet people still wanted to be clean. In the early Middle Ages, cleanliness was often a mix of practicality, belief, and community expectation. Though we often hear that people never bath, the truth is more layered and more surprising. Many medieval people did, in fact, bath. Some even bath more often than we might think, especially during certain periods of the year. Public bathhouses were common in medieval towns across Europe, especially in places influenced by Roman traditions like Italy, France, and the Germanic states. Picture a small town in the 12th century. At the center of its stone streets, in a humble building with steam rising from its chimney. Inside, wooden tubs filled with hot water, herbs, and sometimes even fragrant oils. These bathhouses were places for washing, relaxing, and socializing. Some were communal means, and women would bath together. Others had private rooms separated by gender. They were often seen as places of luxury and indulgence, but also of spiritual cleansing. Bathing could be an event, not just a chore. A bucket of water heated over a fire might be poured into a wooden tub, and a family would take turns. The wealthier you were, the more privacy and comfort you had. Castles had their own bathrooms, often in towers, with stone seats above shafts leading to cesspit far below. These were known as garderobes, and yes, they gave us the modern world wardrobes. Since clothing was something hung, there toward of lights with the ammonia pumps. People used linen clothes to wash and dry, thumbs up, and even carry personal comb and toothpicks, often made of bones or wood. Monks, for instance, were required to wash their hands regularly and even had scheduled bathing days. In monastery, cleanliness was next to godliness, but not everyone bathed frequently. Why? Because clean water was not always easy to find. Rivers could be muddy or full of wash, and in colder regions, getting enough water for a proper bath was no small task. Even so, the idea that medieval people were dirty and didn't care is far from the full truth. Care deeply, just in different ways. As we drift deeper into our story, we'll explore the tools they use, the ritual they follow, and the pricing ways they try to stay fresh in a world without deodorant. But for now, let's your breathe slow and let your imagination wander to a small stone village, candlelit, warm with steam, as the scent of lavender rises from a wooden tube. Soap, scents, and secrets, medieval cleaning tools and methods. Let's now drift gently into the world of medieval washing tools. Not just how often they cleaned, but how they cleaned, and what they used to try to stay fresh in a time before pharmacists or modern chemistry. One of the most essential tools for cleanliness was soap. But soap in the Middle Ages wasn't quite like the bar we know today. There were two main types: soft soap, made with animal fat and nuts, and hard soap. We use olive oil and lard. The latter came from places Spain or Italy and was considered as a luxury. To make soap, people would boil animal fat, usually from pigs or cattle with ash, especially from hardwood fires. Mixture was stirred and thickened into a rough, greasy paste. It didn't smell pleasant, but it did the job. Those who could afford it would add herbs, flowers, or essential oil like rosemary, lavender, or rose petals. These soften the scents and offer some antibacterial benefits. Fumes and powders were also widely used, especially among the wealthy and nobility. For instance, powder orris root, derived from the iris flower, was used to scent hair and clothing. So was ambergris, a strange waxy substance that came from wells and caused up fortune. People would roof themselves with vinegar or herbal tinctures believed to ward off illness and odor. This practice became even more popular during outbreaks of flagels, when smells were believed to carry disease. Let's talk about yuki. Perfumes were incredibly common in the medieval world. Archaeologists have uncovered thousands of them made from bones, wood, horn, and even ivory. He was washed, though not frequently. Instead, it was often oiled, combed, and braided. This helped control light and keep the hair cleaner for longer. Men and women both wore head covering, not only for modesty or status, but also to protect their hair from dust and dirt. And what about this? Toothbrush didn't exist yet in Europe, but people still try to clean their teeth. The cumin, parsley, fennel seeds, or sticks from aromatic trees. Some made tooth powders from burnt bread, crushed herb, and even ground oyster shell. Medieval people also practiced ritual hand washing before and after meals. At feasts, a servant would come around with a basin and a pitcher pouring warm water over guests' hands. It was seen as both polite and sacred. Even the poorest peasants would rinse their hands before meals with cold water if available. As we move into the next chapter, we'll step into a ritual of public and private bathing and the ways in which hygiene was linked to health and the soul. But for now, breathe softly. Let the scent of lavender and rosemary rinse gently in your imagination, and imagine a quiet courtyard where water drips from a clay basin under the clearly morning sun. Cleanliness and the church, water, morality, and medicine. In the Middle Age, hygiene was more than physical, it was spiritual. Cleanliness was not just about health or beauty, it was seen as a reflection of the soul. In monasteries across Europe, strict schedules were kept. Monks and nuns were required to wash their hands multiple times a day after walking, before prayer, before meals, and before bed. The baths were regulated. To some others, allow a bath once a week, others once a month. Bathing was considered an act of purity. The church taught that feel sickness of the body could lead to feel sickness of the mind. But there was also a counter belief that too much attention to the body was vanity, a sin. The tension shaped medieval hygiene habits for centuries. Many saints were celebrated for not bathing, proof of their humility and self-denial. Others were admired for their devotion to cleanliness as an act of spiritual discipline. During this period, medicine was deeply tied to the four hammers: blood lamp, black ball, and yellow ball. Balance was everything. Too much bathing, it was believed, could open the pores and make one vulnerable to disease. It became especially feared during the Black Death and later flagel. Doctors advised lukewarm baths with herbs, followed by drying with soft linen. Steam baths, sweating chambers were also used. These have cleansed the body and were often part of the healing ritual for those who could afford them. In some cities, bath houses became places of health care, luxury, and even controversy. By the 14th century, these bath houses, once admired for their cleanliness, were seen by some as signs of immorality. We began to regulate them more strictly. Some were shut down, others were rebranded as healing houses or reserved for men only. Still, in private homes and noble coats. Ritual of bathing continue. Imagine a noble woman's quarters. A wooden tube is filled with warm water by servants. Rose petals are scattered on the surface. Steps in slowly as incense burns in the corner. It was not just a bath. It was a moment of peace, reflection, and even prayers. And so, as we approach the final part of our journey, let us turn from noble courts and monastery to the daily life of common folks. The farmers, blacksmiths, bakers, and the midwife, how they did stay clean. Let's find out. Peasant, cleanliness, and everyday life. How common people stay fresh. Life for the common folks of the Middle Age was physically demanding. They work in fields, forests, kitchens, and workshops. Dirt, sweat, and grime were part of life. But even here, hygiene had its place. Most peasants washed their face, hands, and feet daily using cold water from rivers, wells, or barrels. They might rub with the clothes and or even scrape back to remove dirt. Foot washing in particular was a nightly ritual, especially in colder months. When warmth and cleanliness were precious, tree was done communally. Often at riversides, women would gather to scrub clothing on stone with homemade soap and rinse with running water. Clothing was made from wools or linen. Underclothes absorbed sweat and were changed more frequently, while outer garments were cleaned less often. Some villages had bath days, usually on Saturday before Sunday church service. Families would heat waters in cauldrons and chew it in sheer tubes. Children bathed first, then the older siblings, then the parents. Yes, the old phrase, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater," come from this custom. For many, cleanliness was linked to season and survival. In winter, people bathed less often to conserve heat and resources. In spring and summer, rivers and ponds became places to cool off and wash more thoroughly. Herbs like sage, chamomile, cymes, and lavender were hung in homes, placed in bedding, or used in teas, not only for scents but for supposed cleansings and healing powers. Hygiene was woven into the rhythm of the land. Though it lacked our modern soap and sterile rules, it was rooted in observation, tradition, and resourcefulness. And as we end our gentle journey through the past, let not laugh too quickly at the habit of those who came before us. They bathed by moonlight in quiet steams. They perfumed themselves with crushed petals. They cleaned their homes with ash and vinegar, and they sang and they washed their linen in sunlit fields. They did what they could to feel clean, calm, and human, just like we do today. So now, as the night deepens, let your mind rest. Drift into a time of candlelight, fresh air, and simplicity, and may your dreams be as peaceful as a warm bath on a quiet medieval evenings. Good night.